Hey, this is Jacob from AgileDad. Welcome to another video in our series of AgileDad University topics. Today we are going to be discussing effective Agile meetings. So let's get started talking about effective Agile meetings. Make sure you click in the link down in the description to go ahead and find out some more details on the blog that will actually expand a little bit further on this topic. Effective Agile meetings, there's a lot of them to go ahead and have. One of the specific principles that we talk about and part of our Agile 12-step program that AgileDad has employed is to make sure that we're having the right people involved at the right discussions at the right time. In many companies, we have meetings for lots of different purposes. We want to make sure we're getting the right decision makers, the right consulting parties involved with the correct meetings. So let's dive into them. Here's the 5. Sprint planning, the sprint review, the demo. We will then look at the retrospective, and we're going to round it out with looking at the daily stand-up or daily scrum. We will also then take a little bit further look at 2 other types of meetings that teams often find very effective when there's multiple sprints involved. Those are oftentimes backlog grooming or refinement, as well as release planning. So let's get started. The first meeting we want to talk about is sprint planning. Who should be there? Well, the people that should be there, we want to make sure the entire team is there. The Scrum Master is the facilitator, and the product owner definitely has to be there, or whoever is representing that product owner. The big things we're trying to go ahead and accomplish here is we're trying to define what is the work that is going to be committed to by the team during this sprint planning session. As we're doing that, there's some key things that we want to look at. The product owner is bringing that potential work to be done and a goal for the sprint. What do they want accomplished? The Scrum Master is bringing in some information, recognizing what the team's velocity is over the course of multiple sprints, so then the team knows roughly what they should be committing to. The team is trying to get a better understanding around what is this work that's going to be defined. Do they understand the who, the what, the why, and the when, so as far as the acceptance criteria, so then they can accurately go ahead and commit to what the work is to be done during that sprint. Time frame for the sprint planning session can vary, but the recommended time frame that you look at based on the duration of your sprint is no more than 1 hour per week of your sprint. So if you have a 2-week sprint, nothing more than 2 hours to go ahead and accomplish this. Next, let's take a look at the sprint review session. The sprint review session comes at the very end of the sprint. The sprint review is to go ahead and analyze, have we truly done what was committed to during the sprint planning session? So the team is working towards this end goal to be able to see what have they done and how is it potentially successful as far as delivery for the product owner's sake. Typically, these are half an hour to an hour at most. This is almost a preceding meeting before your demo session that is one-on-one. The team meets together with the product owner to show them how have they met the acceptance criteria for each of those user stories. They're measuring what truly has been finished, what truly has been done. They're not only measuring their definition of done, but they're making sure have they matched the acceptance criteria that the product owner has defined, either by themselves or with the help of the team or the business analyst. It's trying to determine, is the product now in a state that can be shown to other potential stakeholders, be it internal or external within your organization. The next meeting we want to go ahead and talk about then is the demo, the sprint demo. Now, oftentimes teams will say, do we really need to have one of these every single sprint? The short answer is yes, but it needs to be relevant for who the things are being shown to. The demo itself is intended as one of those feedback cycles that teams leverage. If you have something that's highly technical, if you have something that has been a preparatory type story or a spike story, you want to make sure that that demo is appropriate for the audience that's going to be consuming this information. Again, remember the key takeaway for a sprint demo is being able to see what has really been effective, how have we matched the expectations of potential stakeholders. One of those key takeaways to say whether this is successful or not is that feedback cycle that occurs between the team and whoever your stakeholders happen to be. Now, the demo can be anything as simple as 10 or 15 minutes. It could be an hour-long demo depending on what's being shown, but the team, wherever possible, should be showing the completed work. So those user stories, they should be demonstrating, here is what we have completed. Here is what you now have as potential capabilities. All right, let's take a look at the next meeting, one of my favorite meetings of all time. And this is one that is severely underutilized. It's the sprint retrospective. Teams oftentimes look at this retrospective as we're trudging through the mud. Let's look at the purpose of the retrospective. The retrospective allows a team to set aside specific time at the end of every sprint to inspect and adapt their process as a team. If they're not spending that time to inspect and adapt their process, they keep moving forward at the same pace or at the same course they would have otherwise been doing. Now, sometimes that's great if the course is the correct course, but the reality is there's always fine-tune adjustments. And early on, when teams are starting, the retrospective is the lifeblood of how a team can be effective. So, let's look at the time frame here. This is 30 to 60 minutes at least. If it takes longer, it takes longer. We want to make sure we're encouraging participation from everyone involved in the team, so then the team has an opportunity to make sure their voice is heard. Well, one big thing we have to look at is we're encouraging that inspection and adaptation that's going on with the team. This is not getting very product specific. This is getting very process specific. This is why the Scrum Master is the person who facilitates that and is trying to lead the team in that journey as to how are they improving what they're doing. What things do they want to continue doing? What things do they maybe want to stop doing or start doing? What things do they need a little bit more of or less of, right? The key here is seeing what has been effective, what has not been effective, and what are the ideas that help the team to go ahead and improve in the short term and long term. You want to have one or two takeaways, one or two, that the team can go ahead and start acting on immediately in that next sprint. The risk that you run into if you don't have those things to take away is the team gets complacent. So make sure you leverage that time in the retrospective to be as effective as possible as to how are we becoming better at what we're doing. All right, let's take a look at the next meeting that we said we were going to talk about, the daily scrum or daily stand-up. Now here's one of the big things to go ahead and consider. With the daily scrum or the daily stand-up, is it required for everyone to stand? Think about that for a moment, and let's talk about what the purpose is behind this meeting. The idea is that people are not reporting to the product owner. They're not reporting to the Scrum Master. This is not a status meeting. This is something that helps that team in their journey to go ahead and deliver what they committed to in their sprint planning session. So it is one of those inspect and adapt tools that the team leverages to be able to see, are we being as effective as we possibly can be? So there's oftentimes three questions. We're trying to see, what have I done yesterday? What have I completed yesterday? What am I going to be working on today? Or what am I committing to work on today? And then the last question is, what obstacles or impediments or roadblocks are stopping me from being successful? These three basic questions, the premise behind them is to be able to inspect the progress that has gone on, the potential work that's going to be happening, and what is stopping us from meeting our sprint goals. And it's that set time every single day. Maybe it's 9:30, maybe it's 10:15, 15 minutes or less, right? That's what you're looking at with your teams. And with teams that are in that ideal range or size for their teams, the 7 plus or minus 2, there is no problem whatsoever with this 15-minute format. Now, many teams, in order to encourage ongoing collaboration as they get started, and even more advanced teams will try to go ahead and set aside time right after their stand-up to allow for some immediate collaboration on what we refer to as parking lot items. If there are things that require additional discussion, troubleshooting, make sure that that's not happening immediately in the stand-up, but it can happen during that time frame that follows thereafter. Now, I asked one question. Is it really a requirement for the team to go ahead and stand during your daily scrum or your daily stand-up? Now, the short answer here is no, it is not a requirement. If your team for some reason doesn't want to stand, then there's no problem with that. This is all about the level of engagement that goes on with the team and what's the agreement they've made. One of the purposes behind standing up is to encourage that we're staying on task task and we're moving forward. So many teams will default to that to say, this is our preferred method of communication and this is our preferred way of interacting. So that's one of the reasons why it has almost become a default yes, where the reality is it's a default no. And we have to determine what is the preference for the team. The team's preference should win out here to be able to see what's going on. Now, if you notice that people keep carrying on longer and longer, and all of a sudden it's 18, 20, and 25 minutes, that could be one of the reasons standing up helps to keep things brief and helps us to go ahead and move forward. Now, we've talked about the 5 basic meetings that happen, or ceremonies as they're rolled into Scrum. There are many other types of meetings that teams go ahead and leverage. You might want to take a look at some of the details behind vision planning, how we're doing things as far as backlog item creation workshops. We could be looking into release planning workshops. We could also be looking into backlog grooming or refinement. All of these are types of meetings that can help teams to be more effective and help products to truly accomplish what their intended purpose is. So I hope you've enjoyed this visit into effective Agile meetings. The key here is making sure that we have the right people involved at the right time, and we're ensuring that are we getting the right information? It's not a meeting to plan a meeting so we can have a meeting. Make sure that we have the right takeaways or outcomes as a result of the time that we spend together. So if you have any other comments or questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Learn more at AgileDad.com, or you can reach out to a qualified Agile coach that is available to speak with you at any time, 866-94-AGILE. We look forward to talking to you soon and hope that your Agile meetings are as effective as they possibly can be. Have a good one.